The Allies of Humanity, Book 4, received by Marshall V. Summers. Sixth Briefing, The Networks of the Wise. Our purpose is not religion, for religion has many faces in the universe. There are many religions that we have heard of, and a few we have encountered indirectly beyond our own shores. It is not our purpose, you see, for we are guided by the higher powers, which you would consider to be the angelic assembly. Because our worlds are relatively free in the universe, our religions reflect the things that we study for the benefit of our races and for the well-being of our worlds. But what we ourselves study is of a greater nature. It is of the coordination of the wise, connected with higher powers beyond the physical realm. Therefore, we are not here to represent the religions of our world, for we are functioning very independently of them. We are not here to represent the races of our world, as if we were ambassadors of some kind, for we are here on a very different kind of errand and mission. We are not here to establish formal relations between our nations and your nation, because it is way too soon for anything like that to be established. And that is really not our ultimate goal, for we have been directed for a greater purpose than this. Religion in the universe is so often an emblem of the governing powers, if it exists at all. We feel it is quite rare that greater spiritual truth exists in any race. We find it almost unimaginable that there could be an enlightened race, for that is too much to expect of those living in the physical reality. But the wise have many associates and a greater network, acting independently of governments and large commercial institutions and great trading networks. These things may be useful to us, but for the most part, we function beyond them. You will find the wise in many places, but usually hidden, functioning in deep secrecy. For to have such greater power in the universe would, in most cases, seem threatening to the ruling powers of any world, unless they be very free in the ways that we speak of here today. To be governed by higher powers from afar, in service to the divine, can only be the providence of very select individuals. Individuals not just selected because they have great stature in their worlds. No, it is of a different nature than this. The networks of the wise are chosen from a greater history of individuals, a greater destiny that they have. It is a difficult thing because to have such a great destiny, particularly in a world that is not free, represents a very arduous task, a very dangerous task, a task that requires tremendous restraint and discretion and discernment. Do not think of this as some joyful journey that you hope to be selected to take. For in the universe at large, it is a daunting task and a great responsibility. And even should you meet the requirements over time and be chosen for this kind of role, you would have to be connected with other individuals whom you would never meet, even within your own world per se, and within other worlds as well. You would have to wait for them for long periods of time for certain situations to emerge and to become fruitful and appropriate for your work. So this would require immense patience as well. That is why we can be so patient with the human family, for we have had to develop this great patience, even with one another in the great coordination. Our mission is not yet complete. When it is, we will return to our worlds, if we can survive this process. When this could happen, we cannot tell, but we are being held as a vital resource for the human family, to be called upon when needed, to bear witness to life in the universe as we know it and have experienced it, and the greater truths that we have had to learn and that our races have had to learn, things that the human family cannot see or know without this testimony. It is wisest for you now to simply have an open mind and set aside the kind of cultural beliefs there may be regarding life beyond your world, to not be influenced by others' opinions or the works of your governments, or the fantasies and speculation that exist around this great and important subject. The human family, without even knowing it, is part of a greater coordination. It is something only the wise can fully understand. And even here, their comprehension of this great network must remain incomplete. For what individual can know of a network so vast, so complicated, and coordinated from higher and greater powers, subject to so many circumstances and changing conditions, that it is beyond the capacity of any individual or even group to fully realize? But to know you are part of this coordination, to carry out your duties as part of this coordination, that is the mountain you must climb to learn of these things sufficiently. We speak of things now in service to the revelation that is being given to the world, and its teaching about life in the universe in particular. For you must have testimony from the universe itself, and not from one race or individual alone, but from a greater network representing countless races that function beyond the reach of governments and commerce, beyond the reach of ambitious individuals and groups and nations, beyond all of the corruption and manipulation that exist in this region of space, which is considerable and complicated and dangerous. We bring to you the reality of life in the universe as we see it and have known it. It is not simply our understanding, however, that we present to you here. It is the wisdom of the networks of the wise who share their wisdom with one another through the higher powers. In this way, heaven has its agents on the ground, here, there, everywhere, hidden, small groups and sometimes isolated individuals, but very well connected, so that the wisdom that we provide can not only represent our individual experience or understanding, but the wisdom of the wise throughout this part of the universe. There is no race that could understand the meaning of life fully in this universe, or understand fully that all beings living in the physical reality are living in a state of separation from the divine. The revelation for your world now, and the messenger sent for this purpose, can explain these things to you, for you need a human representative to do this for you. He too is part of the greater coordination, as is his family. They have been sent here as the seeds of the greater coordination in the world, not only to meet the great challenge of intervention and the great challenges that humanity is facing, but also to accompany humanity's emergence into the greater community and to build this sacred bond here. For if humanity is to ever attain real freedom in the universe, or be able to maintain this freedom and to attain stability in this world with your environment, you will need this greater coordination here to maintain a higher level of knowledge and, if possible, even to advise your future leaders. For in a free nation, what leader would not want to have access to such great wisdom without being part of the network itself? For those in political power are rarely involved in the great networks because they are too heavily controlled and influenced by their governments. Therefore, do not think that the notable people in your world are part of this greater network. They are not free. They are not able to function at this level. But those who are part of these networks can advise them into the future. And such advice in a free nation would be critically important, because now you have access to wisdom from the whole universe, not just from local regions, not just from individual perceptions, not just from one nation's own history and limited awareness. We say these things to you so that you may understand more completely who we are and why we are here and what we serve. We hope this will dispel any notion that we are here representing political powers or economic powers, or any power associated with the intervention. We are not here to represent other governments, other worlds. Even the free nations cannot intervene in your world, and would not, for this would contravene their non-intervention agreements in the universe, which most free nations must establish to have autonomy in this larger arena of life. It is important, because you are an emerging race, that you may know of the great networks. Even though the intervention may hear this information, they cannot gain access to these great networks. Only the great networks that are free of the machinations of physical life and governance could have such freedom in the universe. That is why any individual group in the network will only have a partial understanding, so that even if they were to fail or to be overtaken by other powers, they could not betray the entirety of the network. This is why perhaps you, who are hearing this and receiving this message, must come to understand that ever greater wisdom, ever greater awareness is not the goal. Beyond the functionality of your true role and purpose, heaven will not give you this because it would make others far too vulnerable to your mistakes. Great care is brought here in the development of individuals and the assignment of roles. As we have watched your world when we were in its proximity, there are others who watch over us to make sure we do not err. For all beings in the universe are fallible and prone to error. Such is the condition of living in separation in physical form. We are in physical form. We are sentient beings from several worlds. Therefore, the higher powers watch over us far more carefully than they would over other individuals. But we still can falter. We still can be overtaken by other powers who seek to gain access to us or to destroy us, or who perceive us as a threat. That is why we are not in your world, walking your world, you see, because there are powers within your world who would perceive us as a threat most assuredly, threatening their political power or their religious position, for we represent a greater authority in life. We are not mere servants. We are emissaries of this greater authority. But our mission here is very specific, as we have stated in our briefings. We understand the limits of these responsibilities, which in and of themselves are great enough to challenge us continuously. Therefore, it is important for you to understand that there are two levels of governance in the universe. There is the governance of political and religious powers and economic powers, which seem to predominate everywhere and must even be strong in free worlds. This is the image of the universe that your senses report. But there is a greater level of governance and influence that speaks to the deepest part of you, which we call knowledge, or the septa varnae. This greater influence and power speaks to this within you and calls certain individuals into higher levels of service in their respective worlds. And those who can succeed in this long preparation will become linked to this greater coordination of the divine, whose will and purpose is to establish freedom and wisdom and the power of knowledge everywhere, for its potential exists in all sentient beings in all worlds throughout the universe. Though we serve a specific function to alert and help prepare humanity for its emergence into this greater community of life, we also represent this greater authority and influence, and speak, if we can, to the emergence of knowledge in the individual as we have done, in support of the great revelation that the divine has sent to the world, a rare and remarkable event in this part of the universe. For how few races in this part of the universe could receive in public a new revelation from God? You have no idea how fortunate you are to be in this position, or how rare it is in a universe of oppressed nations and strict governments. You who seem fascinated and in love with technology do not yet realize its great hazards and the risk it poses to your freedom, individually and as a whole world. That is why we have said in the briefings not to receive technology from other races, for this plants the seed of their control in your world, so that they will control your world more than you, and you will become dependent upon their technology. Do not think that great technology in the universe represents spiritual power in any way. This is entirely false. Do not think this represents real spiritual power in your own world, for the very same reasons we speak of. We must echo this wisdom that we are sure is part of the great revelation being given to the world. There must be great sobriety in entering this universe. It is the greatest threshold that any one world can undergo. It has great hazards and can have great promise, depending on what is fostered in that world and the degree to which the deeper knowledge has been cultivated and kept alive there. Humanity is seen to have great promise in this regard, but there are great forces in your world that work against this and have always worked against this, and there is the great vulnerability for humanity to the universe, to its influences, to its seductions, to its promises of peace and power, to its offerings of technology to a more primitive and yet more spiritually oriented race such as your own. Therefore, understand that the true allies of humanity are only in part representatives of the free nations. Yet its full meaning indicates that it is the network of the wise that is your greatest ally and asset, and those who can represent this in reality, for they will be free of the corruption of any world. They do not have technological power. They use technology to serve their ends, but that is not their force. That is not their strength. That is not their banner, for they have no banner, being largely invisible to your eyes. Humanity's true allies, then, are the wise in all worlds, and the few who are wise in your world who will foster the power of knowledge. But your greatest ally is the unseen ones, the higher powers, what you would think of as the angelic, who are now bringing a new revelation from the divine into the world to prepare humanity for the greater community, to provide the foundation for true unity and greater freedom in your world. We have been called into service and coordination with the presentation of this great revelation. Though it has not been given to us specifically, we know of its purpose and its intent, and we echo its wisdom most assuredly. But what must be taught for you within your world must come from within your world. And what must be taught to you from beyond the world must come from beyond the world. It is all part of this great revelation for humanity. Therefore, we ask that you think of us in this greater way, even though it may be hard to understand or to conceive of. It is so important for you to separate and distinguish the divine powers at work in the universe from the political powers that exert themselves everywhere. Never confuse these two, or you will be open to great seduction and manipulation. Never think that another nation who arrives on your shores is spiritually inclined or represents the networks of the wise, for that would be the ultimate form of seduction for your people. And though the intervention will try to promote this idea, being aware of your predispositions and your vulnerabilities, you must not succumb to such persuasions. Never think that those who seem to have amazing technology are in any way elevated above you, in their ethics or morality or spirituality. You have seen the truth of this in your own world this past century, most assuredly, that greater technology does not represent greater truth, greater meaning, or greater purpose. There is so much that must be distinguished and discerned here for you to understand our message, our purpose, and our reality. There are so many ideas and beliefs that must be set aside consciously to be able to see these things with any degree of clarity. It is a challenge in your world and in all worlds. How few in the universe have the freedom to see without the overwhelming influence of their nations and cultures and religions, if they have a religion. It is a rare and beautiful thing, and the potential for this exists within each person in the world, within you and others, because knowledge has been kept alive here through the great efforts of many servants of the divine, operating at different levels, at great sacrifice of individuals, great courage, great integrity, things which seem rare, but are still present enough in your world to give your race as a whole a greater promise and recognition amongst the wise. May our gifts to you then resonate deeply, and may you recognize the requirements and the restraint necessary in order to see a greater reality that lives within your midst at all times and throughout the universe.